Good evening. RENEWS English section is on air. I'm Sona Tumanyan. We continue to cut through the noise and bring you news from Armenia and around the world with balanced reporting, expert analysis and diverse perspectives. Join us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, X. Get your portion of information from our official website, recipient.media. Tensions continue to escalate between the White House and California's leadership as President Trump sets his sights on Governor Gavin Newsom. While the media appears to be dialing down coverage on the Trump-Musk vote, scrutiny of the former president remains intense. In a bold move, Trump has reportedly threatened to arrest Governor Newsom if he continues to obstruct federal operations in the state. Newsom fired back, calling the deployment of troops in Los Angeles unlawful and immoral, and announcing plans to sue the federal government. In response, the Pentagon has dispatched additional Marine personnel to the city, a decision that's raising eyebrows across the political spectrum. Our correspondent David Genjan has more now on the unfolding developments from the Golden State.
Steady, balanced, fact-driven, and authoritative, with a measured urgency that keeps viewers engaged. The conflict between the Donald Trump administration and California state authorities has escalated over the deployment of the National Guard and Marines in Los Angeles. Trump stated that the troop deployment was crucial to prevent what he called violent and instigated riots that could have devastated the city. He criticized California Governor Gavin Newsom and Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass, calling them incompetent and insisting they should thank him for preventing the crisis and for allegedly saving the metropolis from destruction. Trump also threatened to arrest Newsom if he continued to obstruct federal efforts, specifically the fight against illegal immigration. California authorities consider the troop deployment illegal and a violation of the state's sovereignty. Newsom stated that Trump's order is not just about California, but could be applied to any state. He characterized the presence of troops on the streets of Los Angeles as illegal and immoral. California Attorney General Rob Bonta announced that the state is filing a lawsuit to overturn the Trump administration's deployment of national troops. Bonta stressed that there is no foreign invasion or insurrection that would justify such a move. As of Monday, about 1,000 National Guard personnel were deployed in Los Angeles, with another 1,000 scheduled for deployment. Additionally, the Department of Defense has sent 700 Marines to Los Angeles from a military base in the California desert to support the troops. According to a statement from the military command, the Marines have been trained in crowd control and de-escalation. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth noted that the troops are in the city to protect federal personnel and buildings. The situation in Los Angeles remains tense. Protests against immigration policy have led to clashes with police and acts of vandalism. The remains of burned-out cars are on the city streets. Protests have also been held in front of City Hall over the arrest of union leader David Huerta. Huerta, who was arrested by immigration authorities, was later released on $50,000 bail. Mayor Karen Bass has expressed concern that the heightened activity of federal immigration services could further escalate the situation. The agency announced that it is focused on enforcing immigration laws and deporting migrants with criminal records, and is prepared to arrest any protesters who break the law. On a social media platform, Newsom again called for the order to deploy troops to be rescinded and for control to be returned to state authorities. In response to Trump's threat to arrest him, Newsom noted that such a threat is unprecedented in America. Former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo warned that the wave of resistance could spread to other cities.
Canada will meet NATO's military spending target by early next year, 5 years ahead of schedule, and reduce its reliance on the United States, Prime Minister Mark Carney announced Monday. In a speech at the University of Toronto, Carney said Canada will reach NATO's benchmark of spending 2% of GDP on defense, a significant jump from its current estimate of 1.45%. Our military infrastructure and equipment have aged, hindering our preparedness, Carney said, citing issues such as only one operational submarine and underperforming land and maritime fleets. More broadly, we're too reliant on the United States. Carney also emphasized the shifting global dynamics. Washington no longer plays a predominant role on the world stage, he said, signing a strategic pivot in Canada's defense partnerships. The announcement comes just days before Canada hosts the G7 summit in Alberta, June 15 to 17, ahead of a NATO summit in Europe where allies are expected to exceed the 2% spending benchmark. Our goal is to protect Canadians, not to satisfy NATO accountants, Carney said. Trade negotiations between the United States and China have officially begun in London, a U.S. source confirmed Monday, June 9. The talks come as both economic powerhouses look to ease an escalating trade dispute that has intensified in recent weeks. The conflict has moved beyond tit-for-tat tariffs to include export controls targeting critical goods and components vital to global supply chains. Delegations from Washington and Beijing aim to revive momentum from a parliamentary deal reached last month in Geneva, an agreement that briefly cooled tensions and offered a glimmer of hope to investors shaken by a series of aggressive tariffs measures initiated by President Donald Trump since his return to the White House in January. Armenian President Vahagan Khachaturian and Foreign Minister Ararat Mirzoyan led the country's delegation at the 3rd UN Ocean Conference, where Armenia co-hosted a high-level event from France titled From Mountains to Oceans, Preserving Biodiversity Behind Borders for a Sustainable Future. Speaking at the event, Mirzoyan highlighted the importance of the upcoming COP17 summit to be held in Armenia as a critical platform to assess global biodiversity progress. This will be a key moment for governments, indigenous peoples, and stakeholders to evaluate both our achievements and shortcomings under the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, he said. During the conference, Minister Mirzoyan signed the UN Agreement on the Conservation and Sustainable Use of Marine Biodiversity in Areas Beyond National Jurisdiction, the first international treaty of its kind. Armenia was among 18 countries to sign the treaty that day, bringing the total number of signatories to 134. On the sidelines of the summit, Mirzoyan met with IAEA Director General Rafael Mariano Grossi. The two discussed continuous cooperation on the safe use of nuclear energy, advancing nuclear science and technology, and Armenia's national priorities and the sector. They also exchanged views on regional developments. Mirzoyan also held talks with UNESCO Director General Audrey Azoulay, focusing on support for Armenia's forcibly displaced from Nagorno-Karabakh and strengthening cooperation ahead of COP17. In recognition of Azoulay's contributions to humanitarian values and Armenia-UNESCO relations, Mirzoyan presented her with Armenia's Medal of Friendship, awarded by presidential decree. IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi called on Iran to fully cooperate with the agency to resolve outstanding concerns about its nuclear program. Speaking to the IAEA Board of Governors, Grossi stressed that without Iran's cooperation, the agency cannot confirm the program is purely powerful. He emphasized that a diplomatic solution backed by rigorous verification is the only path forward. A stabilized situation in Iran's nuclear activities would bring the Middle East closer to peace and prosperity, Grossi said. Grossi also revealed ongoing intensive talks with Iran and the U.S. aimed at reaching a mutually acceptable agreement ensuring the peaceful nature of Iran's nuclear program. On the night of June 10, Russian forces launched a series of drone attacks targeting Kyiv and Odessa, marking one of the most significant assaults in recent weeks. According to Kyiv officials, approximately 315 drones were deployed during the offensive. The attacks resulted in casualties and widespread damage. In Odessa, 2 people were killed and 13 injured. The strikes caused damage to residential buildings, a maternity hospital, an ambulance station, a private medical center, a sports complex, a zoo, and the railway station. In Kyiv, 4 people were injured and damage was reported to residential buildings, a business center, warehouses, and railway infrastructure. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky described the Russian strikes as louder than efforts by the US and other allies to impose peace on Moscow. He called on elite nations to act collectively to repel the aggression, emphasizing that strong pressure on Russia is necessary for peace. A gunman opened fire at a high school in Graz on Tuesday, killing 9 people, including students aged 14 to 18, in one of Austria's deadliest mass shootings. Police confirmed the suspect is also dead and the school has been secured. Several others are seriously injured. The attack began around 10 a.m. local time. Emergency services, including helicopters, responded quickly and the school was evacuated. Councillor Christian Stoker called the rampage a national tragedy that has deeply shaken the country. The international community considers the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict resolved, yet Azerbaijan continues to react with unnecessary enthusiasm to every statement. Russian presidential aide Vladimir Medinsky compared the Ukraine conflict to a potential huge Karabakh, warning that a frozen front line without peace could lead to Ukraine joining NATO, trying to regain territory and possibly triggering nuclear war. He called such a scenario unrecognized and dangerous, risking global catastrophe. Azerbaijan's foreign ministry condemned Medinsky's remarks, rejecting the idea that Nagorno-Karabakh is disputed and labeling Azerbaijan's recent military actions as anti-terror operation, not aggression. Russia defended Medinsky with spokeswoman Maria Zakharova, urging Baku not to misinterpret his words. She affirmed Russia's recognition of Nagorno-Karabakh as Azerbaijani territory, but said Medinsky's comments reflected the conflict's complex history. Our correspondents report on the topic.
The comparison of Donbas with Karabakh by Vladimir Putin's aide, Vladimir Medinsky, was another occasion for an outbreak of outrage. Medinsky, who is increasingly being promoted among the ranks of Putin's potential political successors, was simply making it clear that Russia does not want to freeze the conflict, but wants to resolve it here and now, once and for all. The Azerbaijani Ministry of Foreign Affairs had brazenly lied, claiming that Azerbaijan has never waged an aggressive war and that the attacks on Karabakh in 2020 and 2023 were so-called anti-terrorist measures. According to Hayastanic, head of the Center for Strategic Research and Initiatives, even before this, Azerbaijan's policy in the region not only constantly targeted Armenia, but also periodically violated and disregarded Russia's interests. The Azerbaijani authorities are showing that they are currently uninterested in the positions of Russia or any other country on issues concerning them, believing that all other statements should align with Baku's approach. Relations between Azerbaijan and Russia had already become strained late last year after the crash of an Azerbaijan Airlines aircraft. The plane, flying from Baku to Grozny, went down over Kazakhstan's territory. Before the crash, the aircraft had passed through a section of Russian airspace where Russian air defenses were repelling a Ukrainian drone attack, and it was apparently damaged by drone debris. Ilham Aliyev used the air disaster to make nearly hostile statements, demanding an investigation, punishment for those responsible, monetary compensation, and an official apology. Moscow tried to smooth things over by erecting a bust of Haidar Aliyev somewhere in the city. In Baku, they are confident that Russia can no longer use Armenia as a foothold in the region as it did before. And considering that Azerbaijan's economic dependence on Russia is far less than Armenia's, they believe Moscow currently lacks any serious leverage over Azerbaijan. Yet, Baku does not miss any opportunity to make another anti-Russian démarche. According to the analyst, Azerbaijan is simply taking advantage of the fact that Russia is preoccupied with a difficult war in Ukraine and is in a strategic confrontation with the West. Azerbaijan believes it can create a new reality in the region, which Moscow will have to accept. In effect, Azerbaijan is trying to force both Russia and the West to recognize the dominance of the Azerbaijan-Turkey tandem in the South Caucasus. This is why it is pursuing such a distinct policy towards both Moscow and the West. The expert emphasizes that it's not only Azerbaijan's foreign policy that is marked by anti-Russian sentiment, but its domestic policy as well. For instance, Baku has sharply restricted the activities of Russian media outlets and closed the Russian House. In recent days, pro-Russian activists have also been arrested in Baku, accused of espionage and treason. The analyst notes that for the political elites of European countries, anti-Russian sentiment is number one on their political agenda. Yesterday, many media outlets reported the words of the head of NATO, if I'm not mistaken, who said that if the war in Ukraine were to end soon, it could create problems for NATO. In effect, we see this indicates that the Ukrainian conflict is viewed not as an attempt to help Ukraine against Russia, but as a means to fight a war against Russia. According to the expert, such a policy will lead to rearmament and preparations for war against Russia. The analyst hopes it will not come to that. Russia is also forced to act with restraint in its relations with Armenia, and only after the war in Ukraine concludes can it undertake more active operations in our region. Moscow is also responding to Baku with restraint, but it is closely monitoring the deepening anti-Russian sentiment in Baku and beyond, and is drawing its own conclusions. Nar Gukasyan, Reopen Media.
U.S.-Armenia tech cooperation is thriving, U.S. Embassy in Armenia said in the statement. Ambassador Quinn was pleased to meet with NVIDIA leadership to discuss new AI and digital infrastructure initiatives creating opportunities in both countries, the embassy said in a Facebook post. Armenia's Minister of Internal Affairs, Arpine Sargsyan, met with European Commission for Home Affairs and Migration, Magnus Brunner, during her visit to Brussels on June 10. The discussions focused on advancing the EU-Armenia visa liberalization dialogue, with both sides emphasizing the importance of political steps to move the process forward. Commissioner Benner announced that a European expert delegation will visit Armenia on June 24 to review the draft action plan for the EU-Armenia visa liberalization process. The European side reaffirmed its commitment to finalize and present the action plan to Armenian authorities within the shortest possible time frame. Minister Sargsyan provided a comprehensive overview of ongoing reforms in Armenia and stressed the Armenian government's readiness to exert maximum efforts to expedite the implementation of the action plan, to ensure closer coordination of next steps and familiarize with the broad reforms underway in Armenia. Minister Sargsyan invited Commissioner Brunner to visit Yerevan next year. For more updates, follow us on YouTube, Telegram, Instagram, X, and Facebook. Daily news and full coverage are available on our official website. This segment was presented by Sona Tumanyan. Goodbye.